for Mr. Michael Shanks.
How's everybody doing? I'm good too. So I'm understanding that questions are from over here. Okay, cool. I have nothing to say. Actually I do. Because I've been asked this a lot today. Saving Hope Season 2. We're filming it right now for those that thought the show went away or something like that. June 25th on... It's my shameless plug. So, June 25th, CTV Saving Hope Season 2. I've done my due diligence for CTV. Okay, good. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Shanks. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you for asking. Thank you for being here in Ottawa.
My pleasure.
All right. So, obviously, Victor was one of the more really detailed and just really great characters on Burn Notice that 99% of people have never heard of. And the ending of season 3, just the evolution of your character from the bad guy to realizing he was actually a good guy with good motives, just misunderstood in how he was approaching those motives. And then shortly thereafter, Kobe Bell joining the cast. Was there ever any theory behind Victor actually joining Team Weston and kind of usurping what eventually would become the Jesse role?
No. It was the end of season 2. Just to clarify that for everybody, to make sure that I do know what I do occasionally. It was very funny because Matt Nix became a good friend as a result of me doing Burn Notice. And I ended up doing his other show that had a short-lived career, The Good Guys, that filmed in Dallas, Texas. I did an episode of that, which was a really fun character as well. But Matt had made a promise. Bless you. It's allergy season, we all get them, it's fine. Matt Nix had made a promise to his wife before he did the show. She said to him, and I'm not even joking about this, she said, Matt, I'm happy that you're going to do the show, whatever, but do me a favor. Don't do that cheesy thing that some shows do where they kill a character off and then bring them back later on. I'm serious about this. And so he promised his wife, and he said to me, he said, after we had done the show, he said, I've never gotten so much crap from people as when I killed off Victor, because people wanted to see that character return in some capacity. And he said, I was this close to breaking that rule that I made with my wife to have you come back to the show, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And what I understand, because without the death of the character, it wouldn't have been such a great episode that I got to do at the end of the second season. So there wasn't any discussion. I mean, I tried to sort of like rip him and say, hey, maybe this scenario, maybe that scenario. He didn't really look dead at the end of the episode, that kind of thing. And didn't really go over, so
that part pretty much is finale in most characters' existences. So
yeah, I just read yesterday that I guess this is their last season. That season 7 is going to be the last one for it. So, but they are hopeful that they'll probably do some other incarnations, maybe another, you know, like the Sam Axe movie or something like that. Hey, maybe there's a Victor movie out there. I don't know. I'm going to tweet something to Matt Nix later on today just to remind him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? What the hell are you dressed in?
I got this little artist thing going on because I'm a huge Doctor Who fan.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to ask, did you ever study archaeology to kind of get an idea, get a feel for what you're talking about?
I'll tell this story because it's really lame. When I was first gonna go to the screen test for Stargate, I was living in Toronto at the time, and I found out like a month from then that I was going to screen test for this role on Stargate. So I watched the movie about a dozen times, and I actually went to the ROM Museum in Toronto to check out the Egyptology exhibits and stuff like that. Like I thought that would help me on some level. It really, really didn't. And of course, with Stargate, we took all of the Egyptology that we knew about it and completely bastardized it. So even if I'd done tons of research, it wouldn't have mattered because it made no sense after that point. I actually did, when I was writing for this show, when I wrote a couple episodes in the 7th season, I did actually do a bunch more research on it. So in that sense, I did a little bit more homework when I had to write for it. But when I was doing the show, no.
So no ancient aliens or anything like that?
No. Apparently there are a few people who have been inspired to study anthropology and archaeology as a result, and I'm sorry. Quite a few people, every place I go, tell me that they were, that's why they went into their career, because they were inspired by that, and I have to sort of ask them before, if I'm going to get punched in the face, because they found out after 6 years in school that they weren't actually going to go to other planets and crap, so it's important to know that before you have that time commitment, so.
Well, both those questions, I guess, kind of lead into mine, and Michael, given your character on Stargate SG-1 as an archaeologist who died and came back, and then on...
Sorry, which show is that? Because there's been a number...
and then on Smallville as an archaeologist who led many late lives. So on Saving Hope, other than working with Erica again, what do you really like about the show? You're almost, you're hanging on.
I kind of half die and stick around. It's new for me, clearly. And I get to wear like a really cool suit the whole time. Although this year there might be some changes.
All right, so now tell us.
Did a lot of people not see the end of season 1 of Saving Hope? Well, I saw it.
I care, Michael. Don't talk to me.
All right. It's all about you right now. Let's do this. I really enjoy the cast of the show. This year I get to play with a lot of them, as opposed to just Erica, and we're having a good time. It's nice to, even though there still is kind of a bit of a supernatural element to the show, where there's a lot more hospital procedural, which is a new touch for me. So I'm enjoying that aspect of the show. Still playing with a ghost. There's always got to be something, right?
You're still a doctor.
Yeah.
And a ghost.
Yeah.
Anyways, great show. Thank you for coming, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Hi.
I was just wondering, if you had the chance to play any other character besides Daniel Jackson in Stargate of the 10 years, which character would it have been?
Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones.
Hello. What is the strangest thing that you've ever had to say or do on camera?
Strangest thing I've ever had to say or do on camera. Strangest? Okay, the goofiest was in the first season of SG-1. We did an episode called Hathor. No, seriously, tell me how you really feel. Because that was shit. And it was bad enough that, all the guys had to be walking around doing this. I had this line, and I had a little bit of free reign with dialogue when I was doing the show, obviously. But there was this line that I absolutely abhorred the idea of having to say it, so I was doing everything I could to not say it. And that line was, "You're like a queen bee." When Daniel's talking to Hathaway, I was like, come on, man, I can't say that. And the influence of this, whatever, pink mist stuff that she was spitting out. And the producer came and said, no, you gotta say it. I mean, they gotta know that, you know, she's building a colony here. It's all this metaphorical reference for what she's doing here. It's, you know, she's the queen. She's like a queen bee. The audience needs to hear this. And so, you can literally see the air getting sucked out from around me as I'm saying that line. I think it was like I was squeezing a lemon between my butt cheeks. You're like a queen bee. That was the most god-awful piece of dialogue I've ever had to say. The most ridiculous thing I ever had to do was to, I was doing a movie with my wife and Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's this movie called Tactical Force. If you ever get a chance to watch it, don't. I was playing this Russian gangster in this, yeah, I know, bear with me, okay? But at a certain point, I had to threaten Stone Cold Steve Austin's life by saying, you F me and I'll tear you limb from limb. And I took one look at Stone Cold Steve Austin and I said, I can't even fucking say that. And the director was like, why, what's wrong? I said, he's Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that was probably the most ridiculous situation I'd ever been part of.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, and Hawkman, but that's a whole other story.
Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you.
Two.
I have like two questions. One is, after working with Amanda Tapping on SG1, how is it like working with her as a long-haired British brunette on Sanctuary?
It's like working with Amanda Tapping. Yeah, I mean, we only really had that one scene, you know, that and the shootout or whatever, so it was pretty easy. It was a lot of fun. I mean, Amanda and I get along really well, and it was kind of nice to sort of see her. It was also nice for both of us that we didn't have to do a lot of the episode together because, you know, she was trying to really establish that, you know, this is the second season, that this is, you know, her show, a different character. They didn't want just that throwback to SG1 kind of thing, so they wanted to keep it its own element. So it was just nice, you know, it was nice to see her, and we see each other every day now. Our kids go to the same school, so I see her every day dropping kids off at school, so it's great.
And my second question was, from your character on SG1 to Sanctuary to now Saving Hope, what would you say you most identify with?
That I most identify with?
Yeah.
Being in constant peril of dying?
Hi, it's really great to meet you finally. My question is, having played Daniel Jackson for so many years, how much of his personality has overlapped yours?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, when you spend that length of time playing a character, you know, it started off, when I first started off doing SG1, I was doing James Spader doing Daniel Jackson. That's how I got the job, let's face it. And then, of course, when you spend that many hours in that character and that many years doing it, it evolves as you evolve. So the two kind of, you know, we kind of grew up together, I guess is the best way to put it. So, it's not difficult now with a little bit of hindsight, because I remember we were voicing the app games for the new Stargate app game by Arcalis called Stargate Unleashed. We were voicing that, and I hadn't done the character voice in a long time, and there's, you know, there's stuff made out of good love, so I talk like that, Jack, you know. I was a little bit Shatner, wasn't it? For God's sake. can't talk like that. Oh, Bill's gonna kill me for that. So it was, after doing other things for so long, that at least the voice, the characterization of that person has sort of gotten out of my skin a little bit. It was a little more difficult to come back to, but we'll always be similar in certain ways.
Thanks.
So Stargate seemed to me like a show that really seemed to like pulling its characters in and out of almost relationships. And that happened to Daniel a couple of times, even while Shaoray was still alive. How did you feel about that? And did you ever think it made him seem like kind of a jerk?
Sorry, say that again? I missed that. Oh, I did. Is Jack a jerk? Is that what you're asking?
Daniel got pulled in and out of a couple of those sort of relationships while Shaoray was still alive. And did you feel like that made him seem like kind of a jerk?
Oh, did Daniel seem like kind of a jerk?
Yeah.
Oh, nah. You know, she's got her own thing going on with the glowing eye dude, right? It's like a break. Daniel was taking a break in the relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, our whole family loves Stargate and we watch it over and over on DVDs, and so we're really grateful that you made that show. And so my question is, you play a very bookish character, but there's a lot of scenes where you're lifting weights and doing action scenes and looking really buff. And so the question is, which was harder? Like, were you the bookish person who had to get all buff, or were you the nice buff person that had to pretend to be bookish?
I can't win with answering this question. You know that, right?
Or are you just both?
I'm just both.
Being involved with sci-fi, where the fandom keeps going long after the show has stopped, and you have constant cons, fans that recognizing you everywhere, what's it like for you?
I was just actually talking about it, I said with a friend of mine about the enduring legacy, especially of Stargate, and I'm just really, it's really neat. Especially seeing that a whole new generation has been introduced to the show without me realizing it. You know, when I'm getting kids who are coming up who couldn't have been kids when the show first started, they weren't even born, and saying that they're watching it in this way as if they're watching it for the first time, is just really neat. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It's really, it's just flattering, and it's so wonderful to have been part of something that, I mean, there's been so many things that I've done that I never want to have anybody watch ever again. And then there's some that you can't believe that people are watching over and over again. And Stargate is one of those things where when we first started the show, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know what the hell we were making. And the fact that here we are, I mean, the show's been off the air for 7 years in terms of making new episodes, and people are still, you know, talking about it as if they're watching it for the first time. It's just really lovely, and it's surprising, it's flattering, it's awe-inspiring, it's just really nice. And I mean, I think with us having done it for 10 years, it's amazing that way. I can't even imagine what Nathan Fillion and Jewel State think for having done a show that lasted 13 episodes and having the adoration that it seems to have had. So you either touch a nerve or you don't, and I think it's just wonderful to have done something that touched a nerve that resonated with people, that continues to, you know, no matter where I go, it seems to, people are just in love with it for the first time. It's just really neat.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm a relatively new fan as well, and I just want to say that this show is definitely just as good as a lot of current shows, or even better than current shows, to watch now with fresh eyes.
I follow up to the question about relationships Daniel's been in. Daniel and Vala had a really great chemistry the last couple of seasons of Stargate, and given that their relationship was kind of retconned in the last episode of Stargate, like it happened and then it kind of got retconned. What was your take on that relationship? Do you think it had a future? What could happen there?
That if the show had gone on, would Daniel and Vala have had a future?
Yeah. Or past the end, past the end of the show.
The way I always look at it, that is that a baby, or is that something like, no? Or maybe both, I don't know. It was so much fun to not get along with Vala as Daniel that I always saw no matter what they were doing, they couldn't possibly be all lovey-dovey towards each other unless there was like major tragedy or something like that. So I always enjoyed them carrying on adventures together, bickering the whole way through. That just seemed to be something that they would do no matter what. So whether or not it had a future, I don't know, but they would have been at each other's throats the entire time, so.
But in a loving way.
Or not. I mean, who's married here, right? Hi. Shazam!
Thank you. Anybody know Teen Titans? Anyway, I saw you in Toronto a couple of years ago, and I'm wondering how you're doing adjusting as a new father.
Say again?
I saw you in Toronto a few years ago. You and your lovely wife were on stage, and you were going on about your little girl.
Oh, I've got 3.
Yes.
They're 14, 8, and 7, so it's not all that new. The 7 and 8-year-old are doing pretty well. The 14-year-old. Who's got a teenager out here? Who is a teenager out here? All right. And all of you know what the hell I'm talking about. She's fine.
Hey, Michael. First, thanks for tweeting me back yesterday. It cleared up some confusion for those of us idiots who were lined up for autographs and it didn't happen.
That could have been a long wait, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure, would have been. Thanks. I'm not a sports guy, I'm not a hockey guy, but I really enjoyed the Gordie Howe story. Like, I just thought it was, yeah, fantastic. How much training did you do, like, getting back on the ice? Because I know you used to play hockey. But how long were you at it? How long were you just practicing, just, you know, kind of getting back in the swing of things?
A fair bit. I hadn't really played a game of even pickup hockey for about 5 years before I found out about doing the Gordie Howe story, and fortunately I had about 5 weeks before we actually started to go to camera on it, and I called up Ivan Bartok, who did the behind-the-scenes DVD features for SG-1 and all the other Stargates as well, and he's an avid hockey player. I said, dude, I need to get on the ice again, hook me up. So I went out and played with him and his group of guys, and so for 5 weeks I was either on rollerblades or on the ice for about 2 hours a day and doing weights and all that stuff, and you know, I realized that somewhere in there I had gotten older. So yeah, and then when we were filming in Winnipeg, we finally got there, we did a whole bunch of practices, and then we filmed for about 8 days on the ice from about 11 p.m. till 11 a.m. and we were on the ice most of the time doing all those scenes. So we had a fair amount of ice time, a fair bit of practicing to get back in, and I always said that no matter what happens in this movie, the sequences where Gordie's struggling to get back into shape to play hockey again, those will be the best ones, because I'm right there with him.
Thanks so much. Stargate forever. Hey there, boss.
Hey.
All right, from one hockey fan to another,
now that Vancouver's out, are you rooting for the Ottawa Senators?
You know, right now I'm living in Toronto. I'm not finished yet. And I have to tell you, also from being on the West Coast as well, there is nothing more obnoxious than a happy Leafs fan. I came back from work late last night, so I was back in my room downtown at about 11:30 at night. Now the game had been over for 2-3 hours, where they staved off elimination for one day. And you'd think they won the frickin' Stanley Cup. Yeah, see, there you are. Proving my point for me. So yes, I'm on board with the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, boss, I'm not gonna get that. Okay. Sorry.
You're so boss. See what I did there?
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah.
As not many people know, you guest starred on Flashpoint, a very popular police crime drama. And my question is, after playing Daniel Jackson for so long, was it difficult to play the villain on that episode of Flashpoint?
No.
I thought it was great.
The villain on Flashpoint is closer to who I actually am in real life.
I think all the people in this room disagree.
They're entitled to their opinion, but you know, I'm just really angry all the time. Yeah, the villain. No, I played a few villains, and that one was a little, you know, Flashpoint. As I said to the director at a certain point, I said, "Is there anything else you want me to do other than scream and open my eyes really wide? Going, I'm gonna fucking do it! Do what I say! Come on, Spike, do what I say!" That's kind of what I did the whole episode. So it was different, but not difficult. But, you know, it was different.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Shanks.
Hey.
So I have a couple questions for you. First one is, what was your favorite SG-1 episode?
Oh boy, out of 213 of them, eh?
Yeah.
Thanks for that. You know, it's like asking who your favorite children are, right? You can't choose. But I do anyway. I really enjoyed doing Prometheus Unbound, just because Claudia was that was my introduction to her, and we kind of like did our own thing for the entire episode, so we were kind of like left alone by the producers, and myself, Andy, Nikita, and Claudia just kind of like did our own shtick and see what happened. So that was my favorite to do. I think my favorite to watch was probably the Heroes two-parter, because it was kind of the most grown-up episodes we had done, the most sort of serious, and also brought home the risk and the actual stakes that the characters were going through that were quite often cartoonized in other episodes. So I really enjoyed the poignancy of the Heroes two-parter. Not because Janet dies, come on, that sucked. But just because it was very emotional. It was a very emotional set of episodes. So I think that was probably my most enjoyable to watch, just in terms of appreciating when we could get it right. And Prometheus was probably my most fun to do. So those are my choices.
Okay, so I know you played Hawkman on Smallville, but if you had a chance to play any other superhero or supervillain in the Marvel or DC universe, who would you play and why?
Oh God. Yeah. I'd just like to be Robert Downey Jr. for a while, you know? Not even Iron Man. I just want to be Robert Downey Jr. for a while.
To be honest with you, I think you would have played a better Hal Jordan than Ryan Reynolds.
Thank you very much. He looks better with his shirt off, though, I have to say.
Hi there.
Hey.
So as Daniel Jackson on Stargate, you got to play with a lot of toys and alien gadgets and props and stuff like that. Other than the Stargate itself, do you have a favorite prop or set or anything like that, and why?
I don't know, but it was really fun just as a guy to play with all the guns. You know? I mean, I'm not a big fan of guns in real life, obviously, and I don't, you know, I'm not particularly comfortable with them and whatever in society, but there's just something about when you're firing blanks off in a gun and you got these big ass machine guns and stuff that just gives you wood. You know what I mean? Some days when we're shooting sequences and we're like firing the P90s or the MP5s or whatever, and we're doing it for like 6 hours just to do one sequence or something like that, I would call up my friends, and with all this gunfire going in the background, I'd say, "Hey, Steve in accounting over at Investors Group, what are you doing today?" Yeah, I'm just, sorry, hang on a second. I'm firing guns! Yeah, they're paying me for this! Call you later! So that was probably the most fun that we had when we just got to like expend brass all over the floor and work with our armors and stuff on that. That was probably the most fun playing with the props that we had.
Thank you.
In all of the years that you've played in Stargate, which would have been your favorite nemesis for the Tari, and which your favorite allied race?
What was the last part? My favorite what?
Allied race.
Allied race. My favorite nemesis. Ball was quite fun, because he was just so deliciously mustache-twiddling evil. But also, Adria was pretty hot. So yeah, it's a toss-up between those two in terms of the bad guy. Because, you know, Apophis and Anubis. So yes, probably Ball or Adria. Favorite allied race was the Asgard. And for those of you that don't know, I did the voice of Thor. Which, if you weren't aware, he started off, I tried to make his voice sound a little bit more like Hal from 2001, you know. Open the pod bay doors, Dave. I mean Jack. But over time, he kind of started to sound like Stewie. So by the end, he was kind of talking a little bit like this. Oh yes, O'Neill, I like the yellow one.
Hi. As a Canadian actor, I just want to ask Rodney, what are your feelings about his interpretation of a Canadian?
Are we talking about Rodney or are we talking about David Hewlett?
Either.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter because 6 of one, half a dozen of the other as far as I'm concerned. Well, let me turn the mirror around. What did you think of his interpretation as a Canadian?
I thought it was funny as hell.
You thought it was funny? I thought it was really obnoxious.
Yes, that's why it was
And I thought it was very funny that the most obnoxious guy in the entire Stargate franchise was a Canadian. The most offensive dude on television is a Canadian? I don't know about that. Yeah, so and besides, when I was working with David on Atlantis, I couldn't understand a damn word he said. Because he's one of the few humans in the universe that actually speaks faster than I do.
Yeah, he hasn't met my daughter.
Yeah. So his interpretation, well, it was great. It was very memorable. As a Canadian, no, I'm not sending the best message to the universe. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, Michael.
Hey.
Thank you for coming to Ottawa.
My pleasure.
And you have fans in India also. I'm an international student here. Like, my friends have seen the Stargate DVDs. And my question was, working on SG-1 Unleashed, I guess you did the voice, right? So, how was it reuniting with the cast again? Did you...
We actually didn't reunite, strangely enough, because it was all done in the studio, the vocal recordings. We all did them separately. So we kind of know how each other speak or answer questions. Like, you always know how O'Neill's gonna answer a question. What? Come on, Daniel. So I think we were all alone in the studio when we did it, so we didn't actually reunite. It was nice to see it in its finished form, but some of the responses don't quite match some of the questions that were kind of posed from character to character. But it was nice to sort of see the characters come alive on the screen again. I actually, as a game, I was like, I don't really want to play the game. I just want to watch the cartoon.
Same thing, I'm just going to play it just for that, because I want to know the story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
My question is, what do you think Ascension did to Daniel Jackson that turned him into such a badass?
What did Ascension do to Daniel Jackson that turned him into such a badass? See, that's a misnomer. I want to set the record straight. Daniel was always a badass. Ascension just let him tap into it a little bit more, you know? It made him not apologize for being a badass anymore. He embraced his inner badassery. You're not buying that, are you?
I think that he showed a lot more muscles afterwards.
There was a great gym in Ascension Land. A spa, fully hooked up. Yeah, it was great.
Obo was a great personal trainer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesus. Do I have to diffuse this thing or what?
I got one here. It's Steve Donato. How are you?
Good.
Good. I went to acting school with Amanda Tapping. Yeah, University of Windsor School of Dramatic Arts. I remember, you know, you go to school with somebody for that long, you know, well, I don't know her well anymore, of course. But I always thought that when I got my hands on her action figure, and I know we talked about Shakespeare. No, listen.
All right.
We talked about Shakespeare a lot when we were in school together, and I want to ask you a question about Shakespeare too in a minute. But I thought when I got her action figure in my hands, I thought, you know, I don't think we either of us really dreamed of holding an Oscar in our hands, but that this has got to be cooler. At least you can play with this, you know.
It's a total nerd Oscar. Having your own action figure, my wife is so jealous that I have my own action figures. It's a nerd Oscar, absolutely.
So, to go back to acting now, and I'm not saying that this is any less acting, but do you ever feel like you want to embrace Shakespeare or Eugene O'Neill or anything like that?
Yeah, whenever I see good theater, I always want to jump back in doing theater. Whenever I see a good movie, though, I always want to get back into movies. So, you know, as actors, the only choices I make nowadays is how much time it makes me spend away from my family kind of thing. So, Right now I'm doing a job which is 6 months away from my family, and they're going to come up for the summer and stuff, so it's always juggling that. The idea of, somebody asked me the other day, I have a friend who's, the last play I did was Hamlet, and he was my Horatio in that. Now he's doing Othello at Stratford this season. And so somebody asked me, like, do you want to go back to Stratford? And I went, 9 months. 9 months back to doing theater again. I don't know if if I'm ready for that at this particular point. But I always, listen, good work is good work, and you know it when you see it. And I don't know if there's any specific thing I want to jump into, but whenever I see a good play or a good script being done, I'm always jazzed about the part, the craft that I'm doing. So wherever that's going to take me, we'll see.
Hey. I just want to know, have you ever tried counting how many times you've died in television?
With less than Sean Bean? Is that the answer? I actually lost track of how many times I just died on Stargate. So now that I'm doing other shows where I continually die, I think it's easy to count the times I haven't died. Like when I do a Christmas movie, I'm yet to die in a Christmas movie. I just want that for the record, okay? And I haven't died on Saving Hope. Yet. And Gordie Howe's still alive. So this is a good year for me. Thank you.
Hello again.
Hey.
I was kind of wondering, Kevin Sorbo was talking about how you met your wife on Andromeda, and years later she played on Stargate with you again. How does that feel working with your wife? I wouldn't want to.
Well, I'm going to give you a nice, safe response here on this one. It's always enjoyable to spend as much quality time with my wife as I can. Whether it be at home or in the workplace, I enjoy her equally. Now I heard tell, somebody mentioned to me today that Kevin Sorbo takes credit for my wife and I being together. And as far as I can tell, I don't remember him being in the room. As far as I can tell. I'll ask him about that later.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, I just blew up. Is that? Come on, let's do it. Let's do it before they get the hook.
I was just going to say, I was the one who was talking to Kevin Sorbo when he made that comment.
Oh, okay.
And then I spoke to you earlier today for the autograph, and I brought it up. So my final thing I wanted to say was, what are you going to come back and say to Kevin Sorbo about that, other than you weren't there? Are you going to talk smack? You really talk smack about him?
I know, I won't have to, because when I told because I actually heard that before. I was doing a movie earlier this year, and a gal, so was this year? Last year. And a gal that I was working with, had worked with him on a movie and said that to me. He said, apparently he set you and your wife up. And I was like, what did he say? He set us up? And so I went back and told my wife, and she said, oh, you gotta be effing kidding me. So I'm gonna let her do the talking.
Right. He took you guys every week in and out, so you might want to finish that conversation as well.
I don't think I have to. That's preying on those that are weaker than you. Andromeda was a lovely show. It lasted 5 seasons. Oh! Stargate lasted 10 seasons. Oh! It had 1 spin-off. Oh! It had 2 spin-off shows. Sorry, what was that about Andromeda again? He was really cocky, was he? You know, sometimes Kevin doesn't know whether he's playing in a fantasy role or living in one. Can you guys see this clock that counted down to zeros here? You can't see? Okay. There's these like two screens over here, and they counted down from 5 minutes, and now they're red with nothing but zeros on them. Is that your job, or you're getting the oh, here they come. Here they come. All right. I know when my time's up. Thanks so much, Ottawa.